Human culture seems to have this sort of perpetual roller coaster of like versus dislike for modern technology. First, it seems new and exciting, and adoption rates skyrocket. Then, eventually, that technology becomes a more mundane fact of life, and the downsides of it, now achingly visible due to its mass adoption, become the focus. Enter a fondness for a previous technology the new one superseded. This, combined with the unfortunately powerful force of nostalgia, is a potent combination. We can see this happening right now with the vinyl resurgence, as our enamorment with the world of digital technology begins to vanish. Most notably, we have begun to provide justifications for the apparent better quality of analog recordings. So let's examine two things. First, what digital audio is and how it differs from analog, and second, why some people say analog is still better. Note that this video is a bit of an expansion from my previous video, and maybe you're treading some ground if you've seen it. Timestamps to skip to parts that are not mentioned are listed, and they should be on screen right now if I remember. Modern digital technology is far different in culture than previous analog formats were. Most people knew at least the fundamentals of how vinyl records or cassette tapes worked, even if they didn't understand the specifics. After all, it was, of course, trivial to simply look at the mechanism. Now, however, to the average person, the functionings of digital audio are far more abstracted. We see the play button, we vaguely understand that they are saved as files that takes up space, and we just click and enjoy. This, of course, inhibits the making of meaningful comparisons and understanding between analog and digital. So time for a super simple crash course. In analog audio, the data on the tape or record is vaguely analogous to the sound waves. Some might even say that they are an analog of the signal. It is simplest to explain this with vinyl records. When you speak, the pressure of the air smoothly varies, creating what we perceive as sound. Just as the pressure of sound smoothly varies, so do the grooves inside the record. Hence, when the stylus reads them, it gets a smooth signal that is essentially the same as what the microphone or your ear picks up. As such, the grooves in a record are like the sound waves, an analog of them. In tape, the magnetic charge of the powder in the cassette is analogous to the sound waves. That's why it's called analog. In digital audio, however, the data being stored is not inherently a smooth analog to the original signal, as of course, on a computer, there are only ones and zeros, and therefore no way to cram the theoretically infinite resolution of analog onto a computer. So instead, the computer stores numbers that represent this pressure. Say at time 000, the frequency of sound is, say, 71.21 Hz, and then at time 0001, the frequency is 71.96 Hz, and then at time 0002, it's 72.05 Hz, and then at time 0003, it's 72.32 Hz, and then at time 004, it's 75. The rate at which these numbers, or samples, are taken depend on the audio file format. On a normal mid-resolution MP3, it's around 44.1 kHz, or 44,100 times a second. The details of each sample taken also varies depending on the file format. Between these samples, interpolation takes place, providing a smooth transition between samples, ensuring a smooth signal coming out of the speaker. Upon hearing your information, your brain, like mine, thought it proved the age-old adage, that is, if an age is, 20 years, that analog necessarily has better resolution than digital. Of course, the real world is rather similar to a cheap pair of headphones in that things aren't necessarily what they sound like. See, the thing is that, unfortunately for the Soviet Union, theory does not equal reality. In theory, an analog signal has 100% resolution 100% of the time and sounds spectacular. And by comparison, a digital signal is blocky and low detail. But there are factors that confound both of those ideas. First, analog having 100% resolution. In the real world, hardware has limitations. Phonostyli often wear out or deliver imperfect response. Dust gets in the mechanism. Master pressings are not error-free, and the original analog groove is not a 100% replication of the original audio signal. And in record players, the fact that records are in a spiral limits their dynamic range. Now, digital signals being blocky, the Nyquist-Shannon sampling theorem, which is the sampling theorem invented by Nyquist and Shannon, has a very long Wikipedia page that I do not want to bother explaining. So the TLDR of it is that it says that at a certain sampling frequency, it is possible to effectively capture all the detail of any given function. This idea of digital signals being able to adequately capture analog is also confirmed by experiments. 80% of participants could not tell the difference between a sampling rate of 44.1 kHz and an analog signal. Bear in mind, you can easily get a sample rate of double or even triple that with FLAC recordings. In fact, many FLAC and DSD, or direct stream digital, it's very fancy, files can have a far, far higher effective resolution than vinyl records. So if human ears can't tell the difference, and analog has all these limitations of its own, what's the point in analog formats now? Answer, there really isn't one, objectively, but they just have a cool factor I don't think digital can capture. I don't own any records, but when I held one in my hand as hands at a thrift store, I felt a sort of awe at the fact that an entire 40-minute long record in raw data was being held in my hand, despite that record being a Christmas album by Adam Sandler. Analog just has this sort of physicality and permanence that digital audio, being mere ones and zeros in flash memory, can never truly have.
What we do here is go back.